This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to Headscarves and Good Yarns with me, Amal. The show is all about talking about race, diversity and everything in between, all in the hopes of empowering a more empathetic Aotearoa. We talk about all these huge life things through the lens of people's lives and stories. I hope every yarn you take a wee gem from it and expands your heart and mind just a wee bit more. Kia ora, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Headscarves and Good Yarns. This is going to be the last episode for a hot minute. I'm going to take a break from producing new episodes. Don't worry, there'll still be replays of my favorite episodes coming over the next couple of weeks. But I just want to take a break from producing episodes. I have been producing episodes non-stop for many years now, actually, and I want to take rest. And so my cup is feeling full again to engage in this kaupapa fully, and to give it the energy and commitment that it deserves. But in order to do that, I do need to take rest first. And that is kind of the theme for this episode as well. It was something that I was talking about with a friend last week, just the concept of rest and what it means in the world that we're living in right now, where there is just a lot happening, isn't there? And I really wanted to talk about rest. I think, I've definitely spoken about it on the show before, how, in our activism or in our allyship, it's so important for us to take rest, to make it sustainable, and to make our activism and commitment to the kaupapas we want to show up sustainable, and part of that sustainability is rest. Sometimes that sustainability can look like a steady commitment. Sometimes it looks like cycles and seasons. It can come in so many different ways, but whatever path you go down to make your activism sustainable, rest is a really important part of that, and looking after yourself is a really big part of that too. And I understand that, the ability to rest and the ability to really look after yourself is, in some ways, it is a privilege. As I was saying that out loud, I just couldn't help but think of, in certain situations, there are communities that are just directly feeling the concentrated harms of a particular system. And, when that happens, there isn't a lot of room for thriving. It's kind of this survival mindset. And so I think to rest and to truly look after yourself is a particular kind of privilege. But I think if you do have the privilege to rest and to look after yourself, then do it, because the kaupapa needs people. The kaupapa needs people committed to the cause. And I think, it's important to look after yourself and to take rest to do that. And it's a complicated thing to actually do, I think. And when you think about just rest in general in our modern life, it is very interesting in the sense that we rest in very particular ways, and ways that it does make me question, well, how restful does that make one feel? How refreshing actually was it? And I think that we've forgotten that rest can come in
many different forms. And I think it's, I think we can even desystemize and like decolonize the way that we think about rest, because even our versions of rest is just, a lot of it is like tied to our phones. A lot of it is tied to like individualism. And yes, I understand there are some things that you need to do alone. Like I don't need to be, always, like for example, I don't need to always go just for a walk with community all the time. I'm very happy just have my headphones on and go for a walk by myself. But I think we forget that rest is not always about the individual. It's not always like has to be something that is tied to our phones. It doesn't need to be something that is so like you fit it in amongst the go. There are so many different ways that rest comes to us, and there are a lot of ways that I think in our modern world that we've forgotten how to rest. Because if you think about our modern lifestyles, I don't even know what the average screen time is, but say if you had a screen time of 5 hours, 6 hours, and yes, I just want to put that caveat out there. I know that people work on their phones and it's not all just you're on social things. But like, just think about how often our default in life is being on our phones and how we've kind of normalized that to consider rest or relaxing or, chilling out. It's actually insane. And it wasn't until I had this realization for myself, because I was doing it a lot. I was like, oh my gosh, my phone, it really has kind of become my default. And it just happens. Like any time that there's kind of, it's almost as if we've like forgotten how to be okay with like nothingness, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I think our modern lifestyles have not really set us up to truly rest, especially on like that day-to-day level. I don't know how many of us are really relaxing. And I think why I wanted to talk about rest this particular episode is that's what I plan to be doing, especially while I'm taking a break from producing episodes over the next couple of weeks. I really want to rest, and I want to rest in creative ways. I want to rest in ways that are unplugged. I want to rest by doing nothing. I want to rest collaboratively. I want to rest by myself. Like there are so many different ways that I want to take rest the next couple of weeks, and I wanted to use this episode to kind of share the ways that I'm planning to rest in hopes of recommitting myself to the kaupapa that is headscarves and good yarns, but also just thinking about how I want to rest to recommit myself to kaupapas that are really important to me. I think I feel like I've been feeling this way for a couple of months now, but it's really become quite apparent in the past couple of weeks that the way that I'm showing up to commitments right now isn't sustainable. And so I'm taking that as a sign to take rest, and I'm taking that as a sign of I need to, shuffle things in my life. And I think this conversation, or the things that I'm, about to highlight for the next 40 minutes, it's important for everyone to hear, particularly, those who do want to take rest, those who want to take pause and kind of figure out, even though it is late Jan, I think it is very relevant, still relevant to be thinking about what 2025 looks like. And, if you're looking at the news every day and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot. I am, feeling anxious, or I'm feeling a particular way about this. How can I switch off online? And hopefully, the things that I'll be sharing the things that I want to engage with more over the next couple of weeks will help y'all out, because, I think we're great at, collectively, when I say we as a society, I think we've come a long way in terms of emphasizing how important it is to rest and to take 5. But I don't know in practice if we are quite there yet. And I don't know if in our day-to-day lives there is space for that to happen. And I'm not too sure in our, just the way that this world is set up. This is something that I was thinking about the other day. The way that this world is set up, we are easily set up to consume a lot of things. It's not very cyclical. And when you're always on the go, consuming in all various forms, I'm not literally just talking about food. I'm talking about buying stuff. I'm talking about the way that we're always on our phones, the way that, just everything is set up in a way where it's much easier to consume. When you're always consuming, where is that ability to rest? And so I wanted to, spend this episode kind of talking about the things that I will be doing for myself over the next couple of weeks, to really take a rest, and not only to take that time to rest, but also to think about how to live in a way where I'm not consuming all the time. Yes, I understand that people need to be on their phones for work, and there are certain important reasons why people kind of need to be close to their phones. Other than the purpose that it serves, how can we consume less? How can we stop buying so much stuff? How can we live a bit more slowly? And I know that the people who personally know me and listening to this are probably like, Amal, your life is so full and busy. What do you mean live slowly? When I say live slowly, I mean live in a way that really reflects your values. And, okay, yes, your calendar may look a little bit nightmarish, but the things in your calendar, do they reflect the things that you really care about? Do you have enough time for you? Do you have enough time for your friends and family and your communities? Do you have time to move your body? Do you have... That's what I'm meaning. I think it's so easy, especially in this modern world, to just be the way that our systems are set up for consumption. It's so easy to kind of have your day-to-day outlined for you, or life kind of happen to you because of the systems that we're engaged in. And so when you're living intentionally and And slowly it's kind of, reclaiming your own life. So what will I be doing the next couple of weeks? The first thing that I'll be doing is working on my understanding of empathy. And the reason why I say this is that I think I always talk about on the show how empathy and curiosity are just really important things to have always. Whether it's in your personal relationships or whether it's just how you understand this world. If you have a sense of empathy and curiosity weaved into the lens in which you view this world, I think you'd be more likely to be able to see through your unconscious bias and stereotypes and be able to see people for just being people. But I read something the other day, and for me, it felt like it was even more so a call to work on my understanding of empathy. And I think when you work on things like develop your sense of empathy and curiosity, it's a win-win for everyone, because you're able to, if you can do that for other people, you can do that for yourself. And I think there is something so magical about that. There's something so magical about that. It definitely is a two-way street, and it's mutually beneficial. But anyways, the quote that I read the other day, and I was like, oh, that's so good, is, if your empathy requires you to have a framework or like a buzzword to do something about it, then your empathy is not, big enough or deep enough. And I think the reason why that really came through is that the kōrero we have around allyship and the kōrero that we have around, showing up for each other, showing solidarity, a lot of it has really become neat tick boxes. You can go to this training, you can be given this framework. And, again, there's, these frameworks are helpful, especially when in the sense of giving you a structure to kind of understand what is happening. It's just another tool in your toolkit, right? But when we're kind of going through these trainings, or when we're kind of consuming this information, especially on any media platform, I don't think it's highlighted that this is merely information, and because you have access to this information, it doesn't actually increase your sense of empathy. And I think we, as a society, the way that the kōrero around social activism or social justice has kind of been set up, it has been set up in a way where it's if you're not jumping in unless you have a framework or a buzzword or, something to hold on to, you're not jumping in, then your sense of empathy isn't deep enough. And I think your sense of empathy doesn't necessarily come with consuming more information. I think that sense of empathy comes from being giving yourself the space to explore your curiosities about yourself, about the world, about how you have come to the point where you are now, curiosity about how you see the world the way that it is and why. And that level of, or to get to that space where you feel like you can follow your curiosities, that comes from taking it slow and giving yourself space and time to do that in your life. And, for me personally, that energy that I normally put into, producing new episodes and doing research and, everything that's just associated with Headscarves and Good Yarns, because I'm putting that on pause for the next couple of episodes, it will give me a lot more space and time to follow those curiosities. And I think it's really important that you keep on doing that for the rest of your life. Even if you think you've reached a particular point, there's always more to learn. There's always more to uncover. And I think having a sense of empathy that is really deep rooted and just a deep curiosity for people, that will take you places. Like your sense of social justice and your level of solidarity is going to change. The way that you show up will entirely change. And I think that comes from having that really deep sense of empathy. But that sense of empathy only really develops from giving yourself time to live slowly. And I think in our modern day-to-day life, there's just no room for that. There is absolutely no room for that. And so that's what I'll be working on, giving myself to, by taking rest. One of the ways that will look like will be allowing myself to be more curious and following those curiosities, whether that's by journaling, whether that's having a conversation with a loved one, whether it's reading old journal entries, whether it's doing something new. I'm not too sure. It can take many different forms, and I'm really looking forward to where the slowness and following curiosities will take me. And I will report back once I've come back from my break and I start producing new episodes. Another thing that I will be doing to take rest is following any of my creative pursuits. And I think, let's be real, not all of us are going to be amazing artists in the sense that it's going to be our life's work or it's going to be how we get paid to live in this world. But I think we are all creative in one way or another. Creativity, I think, sometimes is linked with like level of talent, or it just seems to be, restricted to a particular few in our community. But I think we are all creative and we are all storytellers in our own way. And we should give ourselves the permission to follow that creativity and see what magic comes out of it on the other side, regardless of, whether it's, regardless of to the quote unquote quality of said work. We deserve to follow our creative pursuits. And again, I acknowledge that is, there's a certain level of privilege with that, same with taking rest. There is a certain level of privilege with that. And I just want to put that disclaimer out there, but, we are all creative storytellers. We all have something to say about who we are, about the world that we live in, the communities that we engage in, our, hopes and dreams for the world that we would like to live in. And I think when I think about change, when I think about solutions to the problems that we have in our world right now, storytelling plays a huge role in all of that. But I think, if you don't have like that title, that identity of like being an artist, we don't allow ourselves to follow our creative pursuits. And I think allowing ourselves to be creative is so important. Because like if you think back to when we were all little kids, it's not like we were creating life-changing artworks that would then grace the walls of like kaupapa or Tate Modern or the Louvre. But we would be having fun. We would be exploring. We would be allowing ourselves to be the natural creative storytellers that we all are. And I think there's so much that magic that comes out of that storytelling, that we should give ourselves the space to do that in our life. And so I can't remember the last time I was just genuinely being creative for creative sakes. And I really want to do that over the next couple of weeks. I love poetry. I love any, creative fiction writing. I'm really bad at it, but I love like watercolors. I love to do a bit of a sketch. And again, I'm not great at any of those things, but that's what I love to do. And I want to give myself permission to be more creative and to live slowly in that sense over the next couple of weeks. And if you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with, social justice, or what does this have to do with showing up? The more that we take risks, the more we can make our allyship sustainable. And when we have those sustainable allyship practices, it's less likely to be performative, and it's more likely to make meaningful contributions. And I think that's where the impact really lies. And, if we were all doing that together as a collective, who knows what we could do, It just manifests in such powerful people power. It really does. And so I think it's really important and really valid to be talking about all of these things. Another thing is, I think that's really important for taking rest, or if you just want to switch off from the online world, is finding community and being in community, and also living with community. I'm not going to make the assumption that everyone has the best relations with their biological family, but whether or not it's your biological or chosen family, family is a really important community. It's so important to nourish that. So important to nourish your friendships. It's so important to find community and in things and in places and kaupapas that are really important to you. For example, last week I was reading this awesome article about the Browntown Collective and the spin-off, and it was founded by 3 people who live in Ototahi, Christchurch, who are tangata moana, and found that there wasn't actually a lot of spaces or places to just be brown and to be loud and proud about that. And so they started this wee community collective and host events and really are quite intentional in bringing tangata moana together. And when you create spaces like that for people to be seen and for people to be loud and proud brown, I think that's amazing, and that's very, very that's a special kaupapa, and that's something that we all, I think, have the ability to do so, which is find those intentional communities. And when I think about if you feel like, well, I would love to have these communities, but I can't find it. Well, for you, what would it look like for you to set that up in your capacity and your, with the resources that you have? And it's so beautiful when you find community like that. And sometimes it doesn't actually even have to be in person. There are a lot of people I know who have online Zooms once a month with particular communities around, writing or their faith or a particular kaupapa. There's many ways of building community. And even though I've just kind of said our modern day-to-day life is not good, I do find that, online is a good tool to have if it's used with intention and purpose. And so I think it's really important to really be with community, and that's something that I want to prioritize while I'm taking rest over the next couple of weeks. But also just in life in general, I want to make community more of a priority for me. And the next thing is, this thing is more specific to not just taking rest, but learning if, the things that are happening in this world right now are just, it's a lot. If it's a lot, and that is totally, that's perfectly understandable, and I think quite reasonable considering there's a lot happening. I know, personally in my circles, people are really thinking about what platforms to be engaging with online, what's happening with the world's leadership, our climate. There's just a lot happening. And how can you kind of, when those feelings get too much, how can we take rest, or how can we live in a different way? And I think when that happens, it's important to rethink your relationship to the online world. And again, I'm not suggesting that you completely cut it off. If that is something that would make you feel the best, go ahead. You know yourself best. But even just rethinking the relationship with a couple of boundaries for yourself. You can, for example, check the news, but only for X amount of time each day, or only at a particular time of the day. For me, myself, I try my best not to consume news in the morning, just so I can start the day just very much grounded in what's happening right in front of me. And when I'm feeling a bit more grounded in the morning, then later on in the day, I tend to check the news and see what's happening around the world. And that's fine. You know, if you feel like it's just all too stimulating, it's all too anxiety inducing, take a break and make it work for you. And if that means like taking a complete break, that's fine. If that looks like, you know, moving ahead but with boundaries set in place, that is fine too. But I think, when it all feels like it's getting a bit too much, reassessing your relationship with the internet is so important. Just because the internet, it's designed for us to just stay on it and to be on it. And when you just stay on social media, it's not the easiest to it's not the easiest to feel like you're being, present. And I think outside of assessing your relationship with, the online world or the internet, thinking about ways that we can live more collaboratively. I feel like I said that incorrectly. Collaboratively. That still sounds wrong. And this kind of like links back to what I was saying about really being with community and fostering and nurturing those relationships and those communities. And I think when you are living in community, you're also living collaboratively. And I think a lot of our world really does focus on the individual. And as humans, I just don't think we were meant to live we're just not meant to live in the unit that is individual. And there are a lot of communities and cultures where that isn't the norm. For example, speaking from my experience, Somali people, we do not live or move in this world as an individual unit. We live very collaboratively, and I feel like because I'm speaking about my culture, I can say this, that comes with its own pros and cons. For example, just reflecting on my own journey, I can really just speak from my experience now, is that, there were points in my life where I felt like that was really infringing on what I wanted to do as an individual. But when I lived my life in a non-Somali way and it was me as an individual, I was not happy. I was depressed. I was just really not thriving. It wasn't good for me. I really need community, and I really don't want to live as an individual. And so, I'm very happy to embrace that life, and, with boundaries with myself and with boundaries with others, and really holding on to my values. The issues that I had with that before it's not that they don't exist anymore, but I'm able to navigate situations like that with a lot more confidence and security. But I think in this modern world that we're living in, it does focus a lot on the individual, and it's very easy to do things individually as opposed to like doing things in community and living collaboratively. But when I say like living collaboratively, how can we look after one another? How can we share our resources? How can we be there for each other more? And I think when you live more collaboratively and you're living in that collective, that's so healing. There's something so healing about that. And I think when you do feel like you get that sense of healing, those like feelings of anxiety, I'm not saying that they just immediately go away, but you can look at it and be like, I know how to handle it. I know how to process you. I know what place you have in my life. It's not like this overwhelming wave that just crashes over you and puts you out. I really do think that we are all well when we live as a collective. And it can come down to the most simple things like carpooling. It can come down to, having, like making use of your community Facebook group. Like, for example, where I live, there's always people putting requests out there to for help with something, or if they have something, or if people are wanting to let go of things. Like people like that, it's a very active a Facebook group. And even when I'm talking about living collaboratively, there's this awesome restaurant down in Otipoti, Dunedin that I'm thinking of. And I think they're great examples and leaders of like living collaboratively and learning how to be okay with asking for help. It's called the Bowling Club, and they provide very affordable meals, but then also have a lot of free meals, which no questions asked people can have access to. And they can deliver those free meals as well. And every single time they need help with something, boom, put the call out. And it seems like every single time there's always someone that can help and offer their resources or their knowledge or their networks or community. And I think we need to be okay with just like asking for help more, and living in collaboration. And so while I take rest, and just not even just while I'm taking rest, I think for a long time now, it's been really important to me to be thinking about what does it look like to live in community. And I think that's really important when we live as a collective. There's something so healing about that. The last thing that I really wanted to talk about for this episode of taking rest is thinking about how we can like really physically calm ourselves. And this is something that I've personally been thinking about a lot because I have chronic fatigue. And, one of the things that triggers like acute fatigue attacks is stress. Oh, I should probably explain what chronic fatigue is. So for those of you who don't know what chronic fatigue is, you just get really tired, and it's not the kind of tiredness that like having a nap or having a longer sleep will fix. It's this like bone tiredness where you're just exhausted, and even like to the point where like even the most basic tasks just seems like a lot. Like when I'm having really bad fatigue days, having a shower just seems like I've run a marathon. And it can manifest in other symptoms as well, like other body pains, like really bad brain fog, and there's lots of other symptoms. But essentially, that's what chronic fatigue is. And for each person, the triggers for like a fatigue attack is quite different. It's specific to the person. But for me, like, stress is a huge, huge one. And the thing with me and with stress and me and stress, is that I'm not really good at always knowing that I am stressed. Like, I'm not consciously aware of it. And but I can feel, like my body knows, though. My body can feel that stress, whether it's like really tight muscles or a bit of a funny stomach. Like, I can't consciously say or be aware of the fact that I am stressed, but I can just feel it in my body. And one thing that because of my chronic fatigue, it's been on my radar, but you know, the older I've gotten, the more that I'm unpacking my relationship with stress, the one thing that has come up time and time again and has really helped with managing my chronic fatigue is regulating my nervous system. I didn't realize how much I was living in fight or flight. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with fight or flight. It serves a purpose. If we didn't have that, you know, like we wouldn't, like you do, there is something called, you know, a good amount of stress or a good kind of stress, because, you know, it puts fire up your ass and it gets your A into G. And so it does serve like an important role. But when it's switched on like all the time or more than it needs to be, it can cause damage and harm. And I'm just talking from my personal experience. I'm not a nervous system expert or specifically educated to give advice on. But all I will say is that regulate your nervous system, people. And you will find ways in which you can do that for yourself the best way possible. But I've noticed that when I, you know, do the work and I'm doing the exercises and the things that, you know, really regulate my nervous system, I sleep a lot better. I really do truly feel rested. And I've noticed that when I'm feeling a lot more rested and truly rested, my appetite for life, or like my capacity to do things increases a lot. You know how, like the last episode I was talking about, you want your cup to be so full that it just like overflows into other cups. You want that flow. When I'm really regulating my nervous system, I'm able to get into that flow. But if I'm not regulating my nervous system, I don't know, I'm just like living in this state of like stagnant flight or fight response. It's not good for me. So really regulate your nervous systems, people. I would 10 out of 10 recommend, if you're wanting to take rest and live more slowly and intentional. And that's what I will be working on while I'm taking rest and being more intentional about creating space to do that. I will be doing all the above that I've mentioned in this episode a lot over the next month and a half while I'm taking rest from producing episodes and just, rethinking what life is going to look like. And I will report back when I'm back with new episodes and creating again. I will be reporting back with what's shifted and what has made a difference. But whatever you do or don't do, I think the main thing that I really want to emphasize in this episode, that, really truly taking rest for yourself, and living slowly and intentionally is so important, for yourself and for your, for your family and friends and for everything that you're involved in. Everyone is better for it if you, everyone and everything is better for it if you really take that rest for yourself. And I think we need to tell ourselves that it's okay to take that rest and to not always be go, go, go. I think, our modern lifestyle very much encourages that consuming and that go, go, go-ness. And, even in the social justice spaces that I've been involved in over the years and decades, there's a sense of always showing up. And yes, it's very important to show up for the important things, there are things and people that you will show up for in your life, no matter what, because they're important to you. And so there are some things that, you will show up for. But there's a sense of always showing up, but actually to have a sustainable allyship or to have a sustainable, commitment to social justice causes that are really important to you, that actually does involve taking rest. And whether it's the slow and steady that you're interested in, or it's the cycles of rest and then go, go, go and rest, whatever floats your boat, it is actually really important to take that rest. And yes, I acknowledge that taking that rest is a privilege in itself, but it doesn't mean that we should not take it. Because when we factor in rest in our lives, it's, one of the key bits of switching to thriving mode and not just survival. It is, I think it is really, really important to rest. Just speaking from my own experience, because on this podcast, I'll never try to talk for someone else ever. But just speaking from my personal experience, I feel like when my parents migrated here, they were faced with a lot of challenges, and so there really wasn't the time to rest. It wasn't the time to think about all the things that I've spoken about today. It was very much survival mode, and as us kids have gotten older, it's been really joyous to see my parents learn how to take that rest for themselves, and in the various forms that it comes in. So yes, I hope we all take rest in our lives, whatever it looks like for you, and I will catch you on the other side of the break. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode.
Thank you for tuning in into another episode of Headscarves and Good Yarns. To keep spinning the yarns, let us know your thoughts. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Headscarves and Good Yarns, or email us at headscarvesandgoodyarn@gmail.com.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.